Oh, good. All right. Oh, did you get yours, Adam?
No.
Are you sitting on it? I thought there was one in each.
Nope, it's speaker.
Weird.
The last time I helped you in your food truck, I came home and my family liked my smell.
I like your nails, actually.
I
Oh my
think
God.
just like bottled
nails.
with, you know,
So we went
I
to
like-
Martin's after we worked one day just because we had
Hi,
free time.
streamers.
Hello.
And we
Trying to
went
find
and
the
I
name
went
for
to
you,
the
but I can't
video
find it.
and the lady, the attendant, she's
I have like 8,000
good.
friends on Facebook.
And I'm like, she's like,
that's
not to be weird.
You know,
It
7,400 of
smells
them are
like French
bots.
fries.
I'm okay
She
with
was like, oh yeah, I really
Pass
want to
my
create French
self
fries
edit.
now.
Oh, did you ever hear those stories about people that run their
that. I'll find
cars?
it later.
They've
Hello
adapted
again,
so they can
streamers.
run on the oil from fast food places.
oh, like Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger did that, yeah.
And they,
I'm
and it
just
just
next
smells
to
so
me.
good.
I wasted our
There's French fries.
I know.
Yeah.
It's okay. Anybody could have done it, but you did it.
I did. Really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, he's all rashy.
It's bad.
It's really bad.
Really bad.
It's really bad. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, he had a shirt that had a really strong. We got it from
Cool.
someone else, and so the
It's good.
Yeah.
it smelled really strong,
That was fun.
and it was bothering me too.
Did you
So
smell like
I laid it out.
I did.
on
I
the-
took a shower.
I bet you did.
I was like, had a sheen.
Because it was yeah, it was
Had a sheen.
yeah, another sheen.
Yeah.
And
I get
so
bug bites
was like,
because I
oh,
get it.
yeah, here's your shirt. They're like, now.
Yeah.
Put it on today,
Good to see
right
you
after
guys.
I'm
How's
so glad
the
to
truck
see you.
been? I know. I'm really glad to see you guys.
It's.
But it was like
No, you're supposed to be in church right
It was
now.
thunder and lightning, and so we're like, oh, let's just go back to
Yeah.
church.
I had when Dahlia,
Yeah.
when Dahlia was little, I put out a slip
Yeah.
and slide in our
Yeah.
yard in Brunswick.
Missed
The
you.
last hour of the last event before we had a day off, I was like,
Yeah.
And then she
I'm
got a
like, what time
bacterial
is it?
infection.
Yeah.
like, is it almost time?
Yeah.
Rash, more than that.
No, that's intense.
It's rough.
Take
I don't-
antibiotics.
What's really nice that
You gotta come.
No, it's crap.
I
I was
know,
worried
I
that
know.
you guys would meet him yesterday.
I went in
Yeah,
and cut.
Kevin came.
I just
I know.
walked in
Last
like I
time
owned
we
the
could
place.
help, we told him,
He's like, come here, you're out of my way.
I
I did. I just jumped around the grill,
Yep.
started cleaning the grill off.
no.
and as soon as he was getting ready to be done, someone ordered.
It's all natural
chicken
stuff.
rays.
Mm.
Yeah, just as I was getting ready to leave.
Oh well.
Well, that's 75 chicken fried rice. I'm like,
No.
You see
Hey,
the
I'm just happy I mastered smoothies.
Fried rice.
Now I know smoothies.
there's a video of a McDonald's manager who on Memorial Day the drive-thru was open, and so somebody placed a DoorDash order for 13 sandwiches, and it was getting close to close. It wasn't like 5 minutes before, you know, but the DoorDash order was accepted by the restaurant. So the DoorDash guy pulled up to the drive-thru window and said, "Hey, I'm here to pick up my order," and the manager said, "I'm not making this." No. And the guy's like, I don't understand. You kind of have to. Like, my client paid for them, and I'm here to pick them up, and you have to make the sandwiches. No, I don't. We have the right to refuse service. He's like, and eventually, long video, long exchange, and in the end, the guy's like, "Please go make the sandwiches." And the manager was like, "Fine, I'm gonna go make them." Now, at that point, I'd be pretty upset to eat I'd be pretty afraid to eat the sandwiches, but apparently the manager got fired, and good riddance. Yeah. Can't act however you want, and you know the whole thing about the customer is always right. That's not true. But the other part is that the restaurant is not always right either.
That, I heard it's not the entire phrase.
Yeah, it's the customer always has rights or something
The
like that.
customer is always right in terms of taste.
In terms of taste, yeah,
So if you think it's ugly and they like it, then the customer is right.
which is
but
great.
what did they have? COVID?
Oh my god.
Great point.
No taste.
You have no taste.
Oh, I heard today
Lots of
there's
people
a,
don't have taste.
there's a
Or
restaurant
sinus
chain
infection.
called Cava, it's Mediterranean
Kava.
food,
Uh-huh.
but, the, cashiers and the servers
Mhm.
have the, privilege, if they want to, they can comp your bill. You can just get it, they have a love button they push.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yes.
That you just get a free meal
Yep.
because they feel like it.
So I saw a restaurant on social media, a receipt from a restaurant, and it was if you're a cool customer, minus 5 cents. If you were really polite, minus 5 cents. And the guy got like 25 cents off a bill, you know. It was only like a $16 bill, so whatever, you know, adds up. That's 130th to the bill, I guess, whatever. But or 120th. It doesn't matter. So, but like every little bit counts, and it was just a cool way for the server to let the person know, like, you don't really get perks for being like a kind person, but these days it's almost so rare that you like get perks for being kind, you know. And I also like the idea of the restaurant that's in one of the Oriental countries. I'm not sure which one. It's probably not even okay to say anymore. One of the Eastern
You're not
countries.
allowed to say Oriental.
Asian.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Anyways,
One of the countries that way.
yeah, something there.
Say whatever comes to your mind.
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
fair.
So, and it's a restaurant where they serve like Asian food or whatever, but the hallmark of the restaurant is that they're complete jerks to you.
Well, that's in Chicago too.
Did they have one in Chicago?
Yes.
So you walk in, there's like, sit down.
Last stop and last chance.
Yeah, something like that. And then they'll throw your food onto the table and some of it'll fall off the plate. You complain, they'll curse you out, you know, stuff like that. Super mean to you. And some people go just because it's such a unique experience.
That would be fun. Come on.
You would work there.
We would love it.
I would love the idea, and then I would get out in front of people. I'd be like, "I'm so sorry, I can't do this. I'm going home." You know what I
I'd be
mean?
taking home like thousands of tips every night.
Oh my God.
You dirty rug, brick,
Called Dirty
Yep.
Park. They'd throw your rolls too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And they were rude, you know, just, it was an attitude.
Yeah,
It was-
Lambert's.
It was their catch, yeah.
Lambert's in Oklahoma City. They throw rolls.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
if your waitress or whatever ignores you,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there, see, I won't stand, like, I won't sit more than 10 minutes, but, you know, with Ray, he's like, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So would you tip them?
So here's me. This is complete personal opinion. Okay. There's a couple of factors that play into it. I'm not trying to be like super high and mighty spiritual, but I want to be that guy who, if they're that bad, they probably don't get really good tips. And maybe I'll be like, hey, here's a really good tip. And they probably know I'm a Christian or a pastor just from the conversation. The other part of it is not fair to the server. But when you have a restaurant that will only pay your servers like $2, that's changing now, but for the longest time it was like $2.
Yeah.
They rely on tips to pay their way. Now, on balance, the idea is that if you get good service, you tip for good service. So if you get bad service, then
Do you tip for them?
right.
For that?
I still tip, but I will say I won't tip nearly as much. I'll tip like 15%, and typically I'll tip like 30% when I go out to eat. So I'll tip a lot less.
The other thing is your server rude, or are they everywhere?
Or they having
Are they having to make food in the back
Yeah.
and
Or-
then bring it out?
Or,
Because that will make a difference in, like, is this their fault, or is it
Or-
because they can't?
they're at everyone else's table, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and then ignoring your table,
Yeah.
and then people that come in after you are served before you, or even
Mhm.
getting their drinks before you.
That's when you get up and leave. That's what I do.
See that? Thank you.
And you must have had the same problem that Arnold and I did. Going to a restaurant and the waitress doesn't look at Arnold, doesn't acknowledge Arnold,
We will be
and
engaged
will take my
soon.
order and act like he's invisible. Oh, yeah, no.
Tell
My
me what-
mother gave us a gift certificate to Graziano's. And we went there and they wouldn't look at him. And I said to Arnold, we're leaving. And the waiter said, what's wrong? And I said, I'm afraid you're gonna be spitting in his food. So let's just leave, because yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
The server could also be having a terrible day.
Well, I do have a story.
I want to hear Kevin's story.
Kevin always has a story.
Excuse me,
Right.
I wasn't finished.
Oh, then finish, please.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So I'm done now.
Come on.
When we were coming back from my brother's house 2 Thanksgivings ago, we stopped at a restaurant and we went to this one place, and this lady was, it was horrible. Just horrible. And I looked at Micah and I went, I really feel we need to do something. And so we dropped her like a $30 tip or something.
Oh, you didn't take her out back.
I'd take her back. No, gave her like a $30 tip, and she came out just tears
Yeah.
flowing. She goes, I'm so sorry. I'm having this hard day and we're so far behind. And then this big group. I mean, she was just bawling. She goes, you didn't have to give me. I mean, it was great. It was awesome. I was like,
What do you think, Adam?
I remember a youth and parent counseling class in college. Tim Butterfield, my professor, once told us, he said he heard a story from Dr. Jack Hiles years ago when he was in school that there was a situation, the server was so rude to him and treated him poorly. He still gave her a tip twice the price of the meal. Knowing Hiles, he had large congregations where he could afford to do that. He was like a billionaire. And she's like, I treated you poorly.
Mhm.
And he's like, you had a hard day. And, you know, sometimes that creates outreach opportunities if you think about it.
There
I
are.
have the end of my story. Thank you.
oh, please
Now
don't.
you have been faking us out.
So we did tip, but they lost, 2 customers.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, I'm not going to reward you for your bad behavior. I don't care how, whatever,
Mhm.
And so I stopped going to a lot of places because of the service,
Yeah.
I'll tip you, because you served me, but I won't go there again.
I've done the exact same thing. I went to Blueberries, right down here by the abortion mill.
And they
It was the only time I ever went, and I went and I had a breakfast, like a scone and a thing of coffee, and I sat down to eat it, and then I had finished eating it. I wasn't quite done with my drink yet, and I was on my phone, and then the lady came up to me and she goes, "Hey, can we ask you to step outside or stand because we're gonna have people coming in that will be wanting to sit down." And it wasn't really that busy, but I was like, I mean, again, if it was super busy, I would have already gotten up, right?
Yeah.
I was so put off by that. I didn't know what to think. I was like, I'm a paying customer. I didn't spend like hundreds of dollars, but I got a scone and a coffee, and I kind of wanted that to be my third place because it's right around the corner from where I live. I was looking for a place I could just kind of go in the morning, and you know what I mean? It definitely wasn't going to be there because you're not welcome just to sit there unless if you're shoveling food into your mouth hole the whole time you're there. If you
So
stop for
inhaling your
1
food.
second, right? So if you stop for 1 second, then excuse me, sir. I want to pull like a crumb out of my beard and be like, I'm still eating.
I would have taken the coffee and go,
Yeah. So sure enough, it's one of those things where they expect a $4 tip because they went through all the effort of turning the machine toward you. And I always tip, always. In fact, there's usually 3 tiers. I always pick the top tier. I really want to be a generous person.
you're just a top tier person.
Oh my goodness, thank you. You're so sweet. And so like I did that with them, but I won't go there again. I won't because that was really rude. You can't treat people like that. So there's a balance. There's
They
a
were rude
balance.
to Arnold, and he just thought because of his color. I'll have to tell him. He'll feel better knowing that they were rude to you.
Well, they could have been racist against me. I'm Norwegian. What if they don't like Norwegian people?
I know.
So-
So
Something to consider.
something that most people don't know, that when we go to a restaurant, we pay in cash and we give the server, because one thing, we don't want them to take our card somewhere that we can't see it and charge it. But also, there are restaurants that if you pay with a credit card, give your tip on a credit card, they will take the fee out of the server's tip.
Oh, no
So-
kidding.
Yeah, so we always, even if we ever happen to, we have a bunch of people and we pay with a credit card,
Yeah.
we always leave a tip in cash.
Yes.
And we always make sure they have it before we leave, so that nobody takes it off the table.
I did this once. I gave a young lady a tip. It was a $20 bill, and I said, because we had already tipped a little bit on the thing, but then I said, hey, this is not a tip. This is a gift. And if it's a tip, it has to be declared as a tip in your wages. But if it's a gift, then it doesn't have to be declared up to whatever number it is, IRS stuff. I don't do that because I don't want to encourage anything weird. But my intent was like, I found a way around the system. I'm telling everyone, this is not a tip, this is a gift. And then I'm like,
Okay, Donald.
if that really worked, I know, right? I was like, if that really worked, everybody would be doing it. I
He
must be
does
doing something now.
$100.
Right. I actually used it under the table to hand it to that. No, I didn't. All right. What would James have to say? Who knows?
This actually is pertinent.
It's yeah, I suppose it is. So I just have one sheet for you. I don't want to wax long in the tooth. Is that right? I don't know.
No.
You know what? I always use long in the tooth wrong.
No.
That means you're old.
Yeah, it's age, right?
Yeah.
I always use it wrong. I know I use it wrong. Yeah,
Long.
yeah. And as soon as it comes out of my mouth, I picture a horse's mouth, and I go, "Oh my goodness, yep, that's
You
what that
could say
means."
long in the ear, because as you get older, your ears grow, and you see some people that are older, especially men, you see big
Yeah.
ears.
Yeah,
So you could say long in the ear.
I'm going a
know
bit
this.
elongated in the lobe here, so no, you don't like that one. All right, let's do this. After last week, we know that James is capitalizing on the garden motif. We talked about that last week, and we talked about it the week before. But when we receive the word of truth as a seed from which life springs, remember this. The idea is to go on to grow and allow that life to mature and bring forth fruit. We use the tree out front as an example of that's not a little sapling. No one's afraid that that's going to topple over in the wind. The expectation is that's a mature big tree. It should have deep roots and it should be reproducing as long as it's a healthy living tree, right? So just like any other organism, the idea is that something doesn't stay small and vulnerable like a baby or a sapling, doesn't stay perpetually dependent like a baby or a sapling, but grows to be mature and flourish, right? So this helps us properly frame James's statement that faith must be alive rather than dead. He's using this organism, this garden motif, as a foundation for the whole letter. So James just got finished telling his church and ours to purge all moral decay and filth from our lives. We just covered verse 21 last week. That's it. So that the word seed can spring up into life eternal in us and in the lives of those whom we touch. So James continues. Who wants to read 20 through to 25 in the King James? All right, Adam, go ahead, buddy.
But be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word, not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightforward forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed.
There's a lot of familiar stuff there, right? We know the illustration. We've heard James use it. Here's how I put that today. Don't merely hear the word. You must act on what you hear. If you simply hear the word but not act on it, you're tricking yourself. Letting it go in one ear and out the other is like glancing at the mirror and seeing yourself but not actually taking action. Instead, you just go about your day forgetting what needs to be done. But whoever gazes into the glass of the freedom-granting gospel and perseveres in it rather than forgetting, well, they will be blessed in what they do. The idea of self-deception is one of the most frightening ideas in my life.
Mhm.
Frightening. Not many things scare me. I get anxious about a thing or two, I
Flying.
suppose. Flying still messes me up. Yeah, man. Matt's like, hey, you want to come down to DC with me for my hearing? Yeah, I'll stay. I'll just stay here and man the. You need me here. Yeah, you're right. I do. I need you here. Whew. I mean, I could fly first class with that guy all around the nation anytime I wanted. I have yet to take him up on it. I don't want to be with my family, but I just hate flying.
It's
Whew.
even,
Anyways,
You did overcome your fear.
right? No.
I did. Now I can get pretty high.
After
Yeah.
masks became a thing, flying, I can't.
Yeah, I can get pretty high on a ladder now. Not really worry about it. It's really interesting.
I had to get over fear of flying 500 miles per hour in a death penalty.
See, you get me. She gets me.
I'm
Poor
not
girl.
mocking you.
I know.
Playing video game.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was flying when I was 12 years old.
Oh, I was flying younger than that. I just hate it more every time.
By myself with my.
I've flown a plane.
Yeah. I've been on the cross. I've been across the ocean
First class.
multiple times. When I went to Puerto Rico, I flew first class. Hated it then too. Hate it. Anyways, not many things
First
scare me.
class, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Not many things scare me.
Didn't know you went to Puerto Rico.
But oh yeah, went to Puerto Rico. Yep.
Didn't drink enough champagne.
That's the thing, right? Now I might have a secret weapon. I might, but
Try a glass.
I'll do my CBD dropper, see if that helps. I don't know. All right, I don't want to jettison this conversation. But so right, not many things. I mean, maybe you have your own fears. My biggest fear as I grow is that I am convinced I'm right about something and I'm wrong, and I'm tricking myself into thinking that I'm right. Like, I hate that so much. I don't fear it in terms of trembling, although it has been that way. I hate the idea that I'm thinking I'm right, but I'm really tricking myself, and I'm actually wrong. And I wonder how many things will I die with that I am deceiving myself somehow. Like, that messes me up. I don't like that at all. And so that's one of the reasons I'm always like digging, unearthing, getting into really uncomfortable places theologically, because the fear of being wrong theologically about anything, big or small, is less than the fear of being wrong and tricking myself into thinking that I'm right. If that makes any sense, right, Cheryl?
Isn't that, I don't know, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but isn't that a lack of trust in people? Because I
Probably.
usually rely on, maybe some people are scared, but I usually
Yeah.
rely on people like my husband to tell me if I've just overdone it.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
stuff. Like today when I got here and the homeschooler people were here and I thought they were gonna be gone.
I'm sorry. That's
And
on
I,
me.
well, that's okay. And they're just so, and I'm like, okay, I'll be
Yeah.
nice. I was nice.
Yep.
I didn't
Yep.
strangle anybody. I
Yep.
didn't slap them upside the head.
No, I feel
was
that.
very nice.
I really feel that.
Yes, but then I got in the car and I called Arnold so I could vent. But anyway, and the first thing he said was, "Were you nice to them?" You know, so,
Oh.
you know, I have a husband for a reason. Because if he ever died, I'm just gonna be like this, riding to church on my broom. Yeah, you know, everything. I'm gonna need people on a regular basis to slap me. But anyway, but that isn't that because you are afraid that people in your life won't tell you that you're wrong.
I think, and again, if I'm just peeling back the layers of the onion, I'm about to be much more unlikable in your mind. I think
That's
you're
all
right.
right,
I
don't
think it's, I think you're right. It's a lack of trust in people, because I trust myself more than I trust other people. I do. I think I am right more than wrong. And the irony of that is, if I'm wrong about that, I won't think I'm wrong about that. It's called Dunning-Kruger syndrome, right? Is you think you know more about, the more you think you know about something, the less you do. And the chances are actually really high statistically that the more you think you know about something, the less you know about that thing. So there's actually a curve. It's a Dunning-Kruger curve. You say, I know a ton about this. And then you actually start learning it. And you go, I know very little about this. And then the more you study it, the more you actually do learn about that, right? So when I'm studying some of these issues and somebody says, actually, it's this, that, and the other, I don't know where they're at on the Dunning-Kruger. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who I can. So a lot of times I'm like, I watch the life of a person, like Tim Mackey, right? We learn from Tim a lot. How long did it take for me to trust you on matters of like health and stuff, right? And even then, we still have our minor disagreements, but just to stop eating like sugar, like it took me how many years? 7, 8 years before I saw the results. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really difficult for me. And so I look back now and I go, I was wrong about this. I was wrong about this theologically. I was wrong about this and this biologically. I was wrong about this and this psychologically. I was wrong. And it's like, what else am I wrong about? If I am, I want to know so I can fix it and move toward the truth. But the idea that I could be coddling myself in deception, like tricking myself, to me, that's a very arresting thought. And it's an unpleasant one. If that makes any sense at all to anybody in the room, right? So James is telling people, hey, here's a way you could be deceiving yourself into saying, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I'm maintaining my faith, I'm all in, I'm growing. He says you could be lying to yourself. And that, saints, should actually be an arresting thought. It should be. The whole letter of James is very arresting. So what is he saying? He says, well, it's not that hard to tell if you're tricking yourself or not. If you look into a mirror and you go, oh man, yeah, I need to brush my teeth, I need to comb my hair, I need to clean my glasses off, I need to cleanse that pore, I need to shave, I need to whatever, put on makeup, I need to take out, put in my contact. I know, right? I know. It's concealer, Steve. It was a pimple. No. So
How do you know about concealer?
I've used it. I have. I've used it like 2 or 3 times, I think, in the last 10 years. Yeah, I'll use Amber's. Yeah. Our skin tone's a little different, but it still passes. So, So like, I look in the mirror and I go, oh yeah, I need to take care of that. Because James, by the way, is not just mentioning a mirror for fun. He's talking about a mirror as a pivot point for action. So when you look in a mirror, that's telling you, it's supposed to be revealing things about you. And you go, oh man, I need to take care of that. I'm going to go to work. And then you go to work and you have practically forgotten, you look like a mess. Like you look like a mess. Your breath stinks. You got plaque on your teeth, not trying to be rude or anything. Your beard's all out of place. Your hair is completely, you got bedhead. You don't have your glasses on, or at least they're not clean. You aren't shaven. I'm thinking of a guy's realm, ladies, you apply this however. Right. Although I just read last week that in many cultures, even as recently as like 100 years ago, for a woman to have a full mustache was a sign of beauty in some cultures.
Ew.
I would
Yeah.
imagine where your hair grows a bit darker.
Right. So yeah.
Well,
Anyhow.
I grow facial hair so I can be like grandma.
Yeah.
Nice. So anyways, Kim, yeah.
That reminds me of when Jesus was speaking about the people that will come to him, Lord, Lord.
Yes. And who is saying that, right? They say, oh, I did this in your name. I did this in your name. Or yeah, I did this. We did all of these things in your name. Right, but they deceived themselves. They came to him convinced that they were in, but they weren't in. They looked in the mirror, saw what had to be done, chose not to take care of that, and chose to put on a new pair of shoes, something that has nothing to do with what the mirror actually revealed. Does that make sense at all? So this is where James is now, well, actually, let me just read I only wrote one observation. So here's what it says. Right away, from the last phrase of our text, we can tell that James had been meditating on Psalm 1. Remember, he says, they'll be blessed in their deed. What is that? Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, in the way of sinners, and vice versa. His delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law did he meditate day and night, right? He's going to be like a tree planted by rivers of water. And whatever he does is going to prosper. Blessed in his deed. James is definitely meditating on this. And it's not a surprise because this Psalm 1, and I remember you saying this at a certain point too, Kev, this undergirds like every other scriptural teaching. Like it just flows, no pun intended, throughout the entire Bible. What did Jesus say in John 15? Abide in me and I in you. I'm the vine, you're the branches. It's all about growth. It's all about a garden. This motif is everywhere. So that psalm uses the garden imagery. A tree planted by rivers of water. So James is now comparing the person who stays in the life-giving water and grows and flourishes to a person who looks in the mirror, sees what needs to be done, and does it. In other words, the gospel, what he calls the law of liberty, is a active, living thing like a garden, needs tending and action and maintenance and protection like a garden, just like our faces when we look into a mirror. So James, instead of branching off into a whole other illustration calling our faith a face, he's saying, just like when you look in the mirror and you see something that needs keeping up and you neglect it and you go, oh, I'm all set. James said, you can do that with your faith too. You can neglect your faith and say, I'm all set, but you're actually not all set. You're tricking yourself. Now, he's writing this to Christians who've received the word of truth. Let's be clear about that. He's not talking about people who you knock on the door. Hi, my name's Michael. I'm from the Topton Baptist Church. I'd like to invite you out to our church this morning. I'm all set. That's a different kind of all set, right? The all set, what's up there? I'll let you tend to, thank you. The all set would be the all set that the Church of Laodicea offered Jesus. You remember what the Church of Laodicea? Lukewarm. But they weren't necessarily lost people because the Bible says, those whom I love, I chastise. They belong to him. He loves them and he chastised them like a father chastises a child. I mean, to correct and purify, right? So he's talking to people who he says, you need to have hot or cold works, not lukewarm. I'm going to spew you out of the mouth. He also said to a church, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice, I will come in and sup with him, right? He's talking about extending an invitation of his life-giving self to people who are already in Christ. So in other words, it's just like we talked about last week in the quote. Becoming a Christian is an act of faith. Continuing as a Christian is an act of faith. This is not a, oh man, I raised my hand at the Billy Graham Crusade and I'm saved, I'm locked in. There is a sense in which that's true. The seed has been planted, but now it's time to grow. And seeds that don't grow get stomped on. Seeds that don't grow don't flourish. They wither, they perish. And Jesus says, I never knew you. This isn't about a works performance-based salvation. We covered that weeks ago. This isn't about like, oh, if I don't work real hard, I'm not going to. No. It's about continuing in faith. And faith results in works. Continuing in faith. And Paul covered this a little bit in Romans chapter 2. This is not just, Paul disagrees. Paul does not disagree. Paul covers this left and right. So it's really easy to accidentally run one way or another with regards to the interaction of faith and works with salvation. But what James is saying here is, you are a Christian. You have the seed of the gospel in you. Now it needs to grow and flourish. Because there's a lot of people who had the word seed. Right? That's what James called it in modern vernacular, the word seed. In them. The word of truth was implanted in them. It was growing in them. And then they were scattered. And now they were like that orchard out back, except without those protective sheathings, right? And now they're all by themselves, right? There's a lot of danger for little saplings that are all by themselves. And James cared enough to say something rather than say, oh, you're all set, you're good. No, because then he would have been deceiving them. So they look in the mirror of the Bible, of the scriptures, of the truth, and they go, I'm all set. No, now they're deceiving themselves. The idea is to make sure we don't get lulled into spiritual complacency and say, I'm all set. No, we need to give attention to our faith. We need to make sure we're active and participating in our faith. What does that mean? You mean I help the old lady across the street? I think we're skipping an important step and moving to like works-based salvation. We can't miss the important step. The important step is that we abide in Christ and cultivate rhythms of meditation in his word and the beauty of his holiness. This will overflow into those works. Because the people in Matthew 7 that Jesus says, I never knew you, they skipped the idea of a relationship. They skipped the idea of Jesus and faith. They moved right to works. That did nothing for them. They were false teachers. James is not saying, show me your works by your works. No, he says, show me your faith by your works. Faith is the important thing. Faith is the soul saver. Works are what happen when faith is alive. You see, and that's what James's point is here. So he basically is saying, very clearly saying, don't be the kind of Christian who gets on your merry little way in the events of the day and does not tend to your spiritual health. We can't afford to do that. You say, oh, my faith will never wither. I will never fall out of church. I will never fall out of Christianity. That'll never happen to me.
Watch out.
Watch out. Jesus said, hey, let him that thinketh he standeth, take heed lest he fall, right?
Right.
Come on, man, this is true. So I'm not talking about like, oh, I sinned, I'm not a Christian. No, we don't teach that. That's garbage. That's nonsense stuff. But what we do teach is what Jesus taught, is that we don't neglect our faith. We don't neglect our faith. Faith should be the most important treasure we have. We cultivate it, we nourish it, we develop it. And I'll end my little spiel with the scene from that great theological masterpiece, Dennis the Menace. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. It
Mr.
absolutely
Wilson.
is. Yeah, exactly. Not the sequel, the original Dennis the Menace from had to be the early 90s. Yeah. And there's young Dennis, and Mr. Wilson has been spending 50 years cultivating a very rare plant that blooms for but 10 seconds once in his lifetime. And sure enough, Dennis is over there at Mr. Wilson's house, and a chain of events happen. And actually, for the first time in young Dennis's life, it wasn't malicious or ill-intended or irresponsible. Someone had robbed Mr. Wilson's house, and so Dennis said, Mr. Wilson, somebody robbed your house. And Mr. Wilson turns around, and the flower blooms and fades. And he looks at it, and he wants to murderalize young Dennis. And he loses it on Dennis. And Dennis runs away and begin Act 3 of the movie, right? So what's the moral of your weird story, Britt? The care and dedication and love that Mr. Wilson had for that silly plant ought to be the care and dedication and love we have for the plant of our faith. Each one of you is a tree. You have the gospel in you. And that faith, that word seed, will only grow as you cultivate it. And that's one of the reasons I think Jesus said, you all will bear fruit. Some you'll bear 20, some you'll bear 40, some you'll bear 80, right? Everybody's going to bear different amounts of fruit. It's very clear to me that Paul bore more fruit than me, right? That's not lost on me. But thankfully, no farmer No good farmer looks at his orchard and says, oh, this is my great tree. All you other trees, you're good for nothing. No. Every tree does what it can do. And the farmer's going to do whatever it takes to prune and nourish and cultivate and fertilize, right? That tree to make it bear more fruit. You see. So that's why the Bible says, don't despise the chastening of the Lord. He's just pruning you. Have you noticed how frequent these tree illustrations are in the Bible? They're everywhere. Everywhere. So when you think about your faith, again, please don't think about it like a locket or a piece of jewelry or an adornment. Think about it as a living tree, a bonsai plant. Whenever you see Mr. Miyagi, what's he doing? That crazy, wonderful man. Daniel-san, I teach you to trim the bonsai, right? It's not one of the better Karate Kids, but it's still there, right? And it becomes the gi logo for karate, Miyagi-Do karate, right? And it's beautiful. And the idea of a bonsai tree, in this movie, they connect the two to Daniel's inner stability with this carefully crafted, very delicate bonsai tree, a mini tree. When you think about your faith, I'm begging you, think about something living. Think about a baby. Think about a plant. Think about a puppy. Think about a kitten. Whatever it takes. Think of something alive and young and needs your attention. Okay? Well, what does it look like if it dies? That's the thing about faith. Again, there's a few different ways to understand this, but let me say this. If you're worried about it, I think that's a good sign your faith isn't dead. You know what I mean? If you say, I want to have a living faith, that's a really good sign. It's the people who don't care or could care less or say that stuff's not for me, they have no faith. Because after all, what is faith? Faith is belief, allegiance to life. You're clinging to Jesus. And I believe that I was talking to Seth Gillino. I don't know if you know Seth. We were talking about this very thing, and we had a very resonant and productive conversation about this very idea of continuing in faith. That's what the Bible teaches. You come to Jesus and you follow him in the way. He is now your teacher, and now you have something living. So tend to it, cultivate it. I so love what you said, Pearl, on Sunday. I just could not say amen to that more. It's just this idea. She says, when she is true, honest, just, pure, lovely, good report, virtue, praise, that is cultivating your faith. It's growing your faith. You just shared with me that you feel like you have been developing in terms of like being a nice person, right? Since being at church, right? You
Well,
know what I mean?
everybody else is nice. I figure why stick out?
Right, there you go, right? Like, and like, so many of you have said very similar things. Nancy, you shared your testimony here just a couple weeks ago, right, or last week, about just like how the Lord is working in our life. That's the tree growing, guys. That's the tree growing. That is the. I'm such a little bio nerd. You know those little things underneath the microscope that split and reproduce and split and reproduce and split and reproduce, and then they make more, and you say, well, how does it multiply by itself? I don't know, but it's cool. And the tree just grows. And then as your tree grows, watch this. It gets so big it can't be ignored. People see it before they see you. And then in due time, it bears fruit. And more trees grow because of what you leave behind. That's the idea. That's an illustration that a locket can't convey. Cheryl, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking today, I had to go out and look at my poppies, because I was thinking, the parable or whatever about having the faith is the size of a grain of a mustard seed.
That's right, yeah.
Well, I had the faith the size of a poppy seed, because my sister lives in the house we grew up in, and my grandmother had all these scarlet poppies in the front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept getting the seeds from her and the pods and everything, and I'd bring them over, and I tried planting them. For 20 years, I tried planting these seeds at my house, and I moved the area and tried different things. And finally, a couple, 3 years ago, they start coming up.
Cool.
And so I have to go out and look at these poppies because they're so beautiful. They remind me of my grandmother. And the faith was that I would keep doing it, eventually they would grow. And, and even though for 20 years they didn't, and I get more poppy seeds from my sister and everything. And now the irises the Japanese irises my grandfather had, they're not blooming. But I think I need to dig them up and break them up and maybe they'll start again. But the thing is with plants, the other day when I'm riding in the car with Arnold and I'm driving, because I like to drive, and I was trying to play my music off my phone, and for some reason, he had the car the last time, and he overrode it, and he kicked my phone off, and he kicked Oliver's phone off, so I could play my music. I could play everything else, but
Sure.
just not my music. So
Yeah.
I'm driving, and he doesn't know how to fix it and everything. It's
Sure.
just like asking for directions, and he doesn't know, and you're driving, and you can't do it on your own. So I have no patience with electronic stuff. It makes me crazy. Trying to watch a show last night, we kept, do not get T-Mobile internet, it's crappy. But anyway,
Won't do it.
and I finally just gave up and I just went to bed. You know, I was tired and everything, and I just went to bed. I'm like, this isn't working. I have no patience with electronic stuff. But with a plant, I will go out there and I will weed
Yeah.
and I will prune and
Yeah.
I will do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I just have to remember that my faith needs to be the way I treat plants,
Yeah.
not the way I treat electronics.
Yeah, well said. Quite well said. When you said that, it resonated with me before you even made that point, was I thought, sometimes I treat my faith like you treat electronics. Something that like, I don't have time for it right now.
Mhm.
Or I'll let somebody else take care of it. Have you ever done that? Maybe let somebody else steward your faith? You can't do that. That's not their, they can't. Only you can steward your faith. That's really good. I'm glad you mentioned that. Steve?
I was thinking too, when he was in the tree, it needs to be watered. Well,
Yeah.
you know, the word, Jesus is the water.
That's right.
The word.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
If you're not
Yeah.
hearing and reading the Bible,
Yeah.
the word,
Yeah.
water, you ain't gonna grow.
I mean,
If you don't water a tree, it ain't gonna grow.
spot on. Spot on. What is the water? What is the water? What does Psalm 1 say the water is? We talk about excising the eye at all costs, right?
Mhm.
Don't stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the sin of scornful. Don't walk in the way of wicked. Don't do these things. Instead, delight in the Torah of Yahweh. What does it mean to delight in the Torah of Yahweh? However he has revealed himself to you in nature and in his revealed word. Delight in those things. Like King David said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Kids get excited about Legos. Steve and I might get excited about a round of Halo or a boxing match. Kevin gets excited about jujitsu or whatever practical thing he does to keep himself healthy and wise and smart and fit. I get excited about Captain Crunch with berries. Crunch berries.
Not excited very often, are you? That's why he gets excited.
The reason I thought of it is because I had it today.
What?
I went to Walmart and I was like, I gotta get something to eat.
Big
And so what?
explanation now,
So what
okay.
had happened was, no joke though. I had some, and boy, there's no way to say this.
You're done.
I used the facilities, and I stumbled out of the facilities area, and I looked at Matthew and I said, I can't believe I ate crunch berries. And he goes, yeah, the things we do once in a while. You know, it just looks so good on the shelf. I'm like, crunch berries, crunchitize me, Captain. And then you eat some and you're like, everything is wrong with my body. I feel awful. And it just reminds me why we don't eat sugary foods in our health. They would kill us.
Does it take
Anyways.
the skin off the roof of your mouth?
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Not
And
even
it destroys you from the mouth all the way. It kills you. There's probably 10 carcinogens every teaspoon. But like, I guess my point is children delight in children things. And what Paul said is, when I was a child, I delighted in those childish things. There's nothing wrong with having an interest. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby. Okay. You know, like, Toby, you can still like Pokemon. You know what I mean? I know that's kind of your thing. And not at all. But you can still have your. Toby's hobby is spending time with his wife. This man loves his wife. He loves his wife. 24. Exactly right.
He married
So,
his wife to spend time
yep,
with her, not
yep.
so much to go to a job.
Amen. So, but I guess that's what I'm saying, all right, is the idea that as we get older, we should really narrow our foci, our focuses, and say, this is what's important to me. And to follow Jesus, Jesus literally says, if you want to follow me, I got to be the most important thing to you. Come on, when you get married, your spouse literally says, hey, if you want to marry me, I got to be the most important thing to you. That's what vows are. Right? And when we commit to follow Jesus, we are marrying into, that's what a covenant is, guys. It's a covenant. The Mount Sinai, Old Testament, it was all a covenant. That's what the 10 Commandments were, right, kid? They were a marriage covenant ceremony. That's exactly what they were. What? Oh,
It's like, huh?
no, that's fine, yeah. But that's what it was. It was a marriage covenant ceremony. That's exactly what it was. And so, yeah, so that's reflected in following Jesus.
Well, I think it's a indication, I mean, the first time that Arnold and I went to a potluck at this church, we were so impressed. Everybody got up when they were done and everybody cleaned up.
Sure.
And I thought, wow, because every other church you've been to, it's the cleanup clique, you know, or something. We were always part of that. We were always part of the few people that would get up and clean, and people would just sit there.
Sure.
And I was so impressed with this church. It tells you a lot about this church, and that I can't imagine if you have like a candy wrapper out front, I can't imagine anybody in this room would walk by and not pick it up.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been to
Totally.
churches where they do, and they kind of delegate it to, well, maybe not.
Yeah, Kim might walk by at no fault of her own.
If it's stuck to her shoe, she would pick it up. So. Yeah. But
That's
I mean, I
fantastic.
think that says a lot. I've seen churches where there's stuff that needs to be done and nobody will come forward and do it.
Sure.
And I think that tells you, I think to me, it's an indicator about the faith of the community.
Sure. I think so, right?
And we're looking out for each other.
I think so. And again, this is an awesome time to reiterate. We're not talking about like, if I help 3 people cross the road, does that keep my faith alive? That's not the metric. The metric is, am I abiding in Christ? Am I cultivating rhythms of grace? Am I meditating in the Word? Am I delighting in His law? That will overflow into. In other words, you can't make fruit. Trees make fruit. So focus on the root, and the fruit will follow.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit to what Cheryl said. One of my biggest responsibility was to keep the church clean. But I was always upset that people were not, sharing in that process too. Because I was like, because a lot of times that church consisted of people who were, dependent on the government and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, in a situation like that, in the inner city setting, I guess, at first I was learning that, people aren't always gonna do that.
Or don't take ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
ownership of that.
About being, and it's, we should all want to be contributors, right?
Mhm.
Rather than drainers, contributors, people who have a bountiful mindset and a scarcity mindset. Did you have something? Oh, yeah, go ahead. And then Steve.
I just wondering. Great.
It's always interesting because when we go through things, and I'm always thinking in the concrete. So what do I do?
Trowel it.
And sometimes it's funny because that the do is like, it's like the easy part. And so I think it's what we all kind of focus on more is, okay, so it's what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. And that cultivation, it's harder to grasp because you actually have to be like listening and thinking about and have your mind on spiritual things. And you can't always be distracting yourself with other things, which some might think it's harder with children, but it's actually easier because you're constantly trying to teach them, as I'm trying to teach my children to, do what's right and to, you can only go so far with like the rules because then you have like 12 million rules and you can't even remember all of the rules. So you have to teach them that they have to love each other. And then their behavior toward each other will overflow from loving.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I go through these things, I'm always thinking, okay, so what do I do? Whereas if I go back to what am I trying to teach my children, I'm much more focused on what I should be focused on, which is who should I be? Am I loving? Am I patient? Am I kind? And then those attributes necessarily outflow into what you do.
Yeah.
So if I'm loving my children, if I'm loving my husband, those, the things to do are just, you will just do them.
You're thinking the right thoughts too.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what does the Bible say? Love God, love others. On this
Mhm.
hangs all the law and the prophet. All the rules that you can never keep track of, you don't have to. Love God, love others. Everything else, that's the root. Everything else will be the fruit.
Well, on that, I'm thinking, like you said, love God, love Christ. The more you love him and grow in faith, the more that comes out automatically.
Yep.
Because you're concentrating on him rather than, the latest Yahoo video or whatever.
Yeah.
So, Christ just automatically comes out the more you grow in faith.
And it's, ooh. Okay, so James, in the very next verse, 26 and 27, Steve could not have introduced those better, because he said, we've been talking about the way that as you nourish the root, the fruit happen. James then moves in the next two verses that we're going to tackle next week. It's really cool. We can continue this discussion then of what that fruit looks like. Because a lot of people say, I have the fruit of God. And what is that? Well, it's not things that are dressed up. It's not works for work's sake. True religion and undefiled before the Father is this: to minister to the widows and the orphans and to keep yourself unspotted from the world. That's fruit of the Spirit, you see. All the other works that we say, well, I did this and I did this and I did this, that's not always overflow from the Spirit. Sometimes it's hardly that at all. And again, I do think of sometimes back to my own denominational tradition. You guys know I like to wear a suit or a button-down shirt or something, but that's not necessarily an overflow of a good spiritual life, because crooks and robbers wear suits. That's not necessarily a symptom of anything. It doesn't have to be. Can be, but often isn't.
Politicians wear suits.
What's that?
Politicians wear suits.
Right, and Paul didn't, so that's all you need to know. I don't know. I still like my suits, but I don't have to wear them. And Kevin, boy, he goes all out sometimes, wearing his vest and what?
Not anymore. No, I was thinking about fruit. You look at the fruit of the Spirit, and it is literally all about the outpouring toward others.
Yeah.
The love, joy, peace, all those. It's all about
How we treat others.
literally.
By your
Yep.
fruits you shall know them.
It's not hasta lashanaha. It's love, joy, peace.
Well, how do I know if my faith is dead? How are you treating other people? Is there love, joy, peace, long suffering, right? Or the works of the flesh, which are these? You know what I mean? This is huge, right? This is Cheryl.
Is this like Martha and Mary? Because when I was a kid and I'd read that, I'm like, well, yeah, I agree with Martha. She should be in the kitchen fixing
know.
stuff. What is she?
I know.
Mary's sitting
Make
on
a
her
sandwich.
butt, talking to Jesus, that's
Yeah.
nothing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but that was really important.
I think there's more to the Martha Mary story than the text reveals, that readers in that ancient context would have picked up on much more quickly. So with that in mind, I do think the lesson learned is still the same of Mary chose wisely, because Jesus isn't always going to be there. And she chose to literally dip her roots in the water right there in her home. Whereas Martha said, I got to make sure everything's just perfect. You see the difference there? Not that Martha's works were bad, but it was work for work's sake, when instead she could be putting her roots in the water, and that would overflow into more needful works. So I think Martha's works were a lot like wearing a suit. Nothing wrong with it. And sometimes wearing a suit can be the overflow of dipping your feet in the water. Actually, sure can. Depends on the person and the culture. But for Martha, she was just working, because that's what you do. It's just a thing to do. And she's exactly right. And then the idea was, Mary said, that's important. But spending time with Jesus will teach me how to do that well as everything else well. Like, this comes first, everything else comes second.
Well, Jesus said that himself.
Correct.
Yeah,
She chose the
they're
better.
so focused on the 600 laws, and they're so focused on the traditions. They're so focused on the writings. They're so focused on that. And Jesus, like, well, you kind of forgot, love and compassion and faith, and
Mercy.
Yeah,
Because
mercy.
those other things are always tangible. Like if
he wasn't throwing those away. He's like, but you'd ought to be not kind of be a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, still don't eat the pork, but don't be a jerk. You know what I mean?
No pork. No.
Yeah. I've always thought that's part of the appeal of some of the cults.
Yeah.
If you just do
Yeah.
these things, you're all set.
How about that?
You
And
don't have to think.
that, oof.
You don't
Oh
develop
man.
spiritually.
Don't go down that
Just
road.
do the
I
things.
want to.
Don't go down
I
that
want to.
We'd be here for an hour.
I know.
Isn't that like in our society, people are like, oh, you gotta accept this because they're not thinking?
Near. Yes.
Yeah.
And I won't go down the road. I won't. I'm just gonna point you down the road. Just look at some denominational tradition, and if you want a low hanging fruit, pick Roman Catholicism, right? There are Roman Catholic Christians. I love them and know them and learn from them, okay? But what a lot of that system is built on is, oh yeah, do the rosary, say the Hail Marys, and this, that, and the other. To what end? Because if
Confess to
you
your priest.
will do these things, they will magically absolve you because it's works for work's sake. And so you show up in church, you do the things, and then God will like weigh your actions against actions. But God, he doesn't judge hollow actions. We saw that in Matthew 7. I did all these things in your name. No. But God judges the heart. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart, you see. And so there are many Roman Catholic Christians. I'm sure there are. There might be more Roman Catholic Christians than there are Baptist ones. I have no idea, right? But just something to think about. And again, I don't want to go down that road. There's a lot of examples we could use, even some from our common past in many ways. But something to think about there. That's really, really good observation, Steve.
Well, I was thinking on that too, a lot of that is self-motivated.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Ooh.
the word
Mm.
of Christ,
Mm.
he didn't make big issues out of what he did. People around him did.
That's so good.
But it also curtails off the potentiality of it's easier
Mm-hmm.
if I hand you this. These are all the things you're supposed to do in order to be qualified to be a Sunday school teacher. As long as you agree to these things, you're a great Christian. It's easier just to follow the set of rules rather than fully give your heart to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And the following the rules will naturally happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to say, well, I'm just going to do my checklist and I'll be okay.
And the problem you have when you do the same thing over and over again, it no longer means anything.
Correct.
Correct.
It's just a ritual that you're doing, and it doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
But hey, I'm going there and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and then I go home and just do whatever.
And how this connects to the sacraments, right? Sacraments just means sacred mystery. I'm not talking about salvation.
Doesn't Jesus talk about that in the Bible, about that is
Very much
doing
so.
the same thing over and over?
Very much so. Not vain repetition. The idea is we come to the bread and the cup, and if we just go, yeah, I took communion, I communed with Jesus, you've done nothing. You just ate some bread and drank done nothing.
You know, about 48 calories.
You know what I'm saying, right? And gluten if we didn't use the right bread. But if you come from the heart and say, Jesus, I love you. I know you are mine. For thee, all the follies of sin I resign. I love you. I commune with you. I eat your flesh and drink your blood symbolically to have you in me symbolically. And this beautiful sacred mystery, we embrace it and let it embrace and envelop us. Oh, that's everything. But it can easily become routine, just like waking up to the same person every morning. Letting it become routine is a choice. Steph and then Adam.
I was just gonna say, like, when Toby and I went to that mass recently for my stepdad,
Yeah.
like, I was literally reciting the entire thing in my head.
No kidding.
Like, I knew the whole thing from my childhood, like,
Wow.
because it's the same thing every time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, when I learned about Christianity the way we see it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it was so hard because it was not like that. It was
Yep.
more the heart,
Yep.
and that is not the heart. And it's just so, when I was there that day, it made me remember and realize, like, it's that repetition, that memorizing,
Mm-hmm.
the checklist,
Yep.
and all of the things, like, there's no heart behind it.
Yes.
And it is the self-motivated thing too, though. Like, there are people who, like you said, are Catholic Christians.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, like, I had this jaded perspective
Yeah.
of all of that.
Yep.
But then you meet people in that denomination, and, like, they do come from the heart.
Yep.
And it's like, where did you learn that? Because,
Right.
like,
Yes. Not from your denominational tradition. Steph used a very powerful concept here. This idea of vain repetition. They're saying things that could be meaningful
Oh, very much so.
if they came from a heart of meaning. So Jesus didn't say don't pray with repetition. All their prayers were repetitious.
All of them.
All of them. They recited their prayers. The Shema, right? I can't recite it in Hebrew right now because I'm not brushed up on it and I'd be embarrassed if I tried. But hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, you know? This Shema, and then they go on with a little bit more. The Passover, one long recitation.
Yes.
Memorizing the Torah. They would recite it. But if you did it without heart, it became a vain repetition. Substitute the word dead for vain, hollow for vain, husk for vain. Empty, no life inside. It's a dead repetition. What could be alive isn't alive, and the only difference is the heart. Same with the works. They could be alive. The only difference is the heart. And to Steve's point, the idea of being self-motivated, I'm going to do this work and I'm going to get to heaven. Then your works are vain because your works are about you. But if you say, man, I love my neighbor, man, I love God, I'm going to do this for God. That's one of the reasons we don't say, I gave this much in church, because then it's at least partly from me. But if it's for God, then I don't have to tell other people what I've done throughout the week. If it's for that person, that I don't need a reward in your place. You see this? This is everything, guys. This is the heart of the gospel. We're here. Adam?
I was going to say that in a lot of the, you know, we were taught in regards to communion, the way the Catholic churches do it, they actually teach that you are actually eating Jesus and you are drinking his actual blood. And it's a lot of perversion when it comes to communion.
Yep.
Don't the priests have to drink the wine?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
they'll-
Roman
they'll-
Catholicism.
I thought they would pass a goblet around, and everybody would drink out of the same goblet,
They do.
and then the priest will wipe it off. And
So-
That is what
But
they-
doesn't, then
Yeah,
they have
and
to
it's some
drink the rest
Roman
of the
Catholic
wine?
traditions. A lot of them will,
Every church I've seen does it that way.
they pass a goblet around the
That's what they
church.
did it this time.
Like someone will
They-
hold it
no,
and
they-
everyone
they
comes.
stood up
Yes,
front,
that's what I was
they
referring
wiped
to.
it off, and that
Yeah.
came there.
I thought you were talking about like you were passing it in through the aisles. Oh, yeah, no.
That
They
ain't
came to the
fun.
priest, and
So,
he
right.
stood there.
You come to the priest who is vicariously representing, you know, a Old Testament priest, right? And when he presents the body and the blood, you're supposed to be, and only he can like touch it. And there are times when I don't know the rules. I wish I knew the rules, but there's times when even nobody can touch it. It has to be picked up with like tongs. But apparently the priest can touch it, and if it falls, like the saint can't like reach down and pick it up. It can only be touched like by the priest. Like there's all kinds of weird rules, and like there's all kinds of stuff. But that's where you get messed up by going way too literal with something that Jesus actually meant to not be literal. You know what I mean? There is a mystical way in which the body and blood of Christ are present. Some would say symbolically. Some would say it's consubstantiatively. I'm not there, but many Orthodox Christians do. But no Orthodox Christian says transubstantiatively, which means it is now
Transform.
like transformed biologically
You're
and
non-religious.
materially.
Oh my
And that's, you know, it would taste different. So then when they're like, no, it's mystical. Okay, then you're a consubstantiationist. You know,
Well, that's why
anyway, so.
it's fun when church is over and the kids come up and they're all like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
It's so cute.
I
It's
still,
so cute.
I know, I still feel like,
I know.
I
Like,
know,
this is
it's
wrong.
when
And I'm like, no.
my
It's
children
a whole
polish off
different
the,
feeling. It's a whole different
I know,
feeling, and I
I
think
know.
it's so sweet.
Stand in the
It
kitchen
is.
with the leftover bottle.
I know.
Right.
Well,
Well,
like,
throwing away grapes.
when the matzos go bad, like when they're getting old, and I'm like, these are getting stale. I'll just go eat the rest of the matzos, and I'm like, okay, this is just a matzo. It's a gluten-free matzo. That's all this is. And I remind myself back in college, I would buy a thing of matzos because I loved them so much during the Lord's Supper. I was like, I can buy these anytime I want.
You go.
Okay,
Really?
matzos.
Okay.
Oh, I would buy boxes of matzos.
Where did
That's
they
like
say
a level of weird.
They
that-
would. I don't know. We had
I don't
them
know if I'm.
some Lord's Supper, and I loved them. I don't remember. But you would go down to the forgot the name of it, but right on 63rd and Meridian. Yeah.
My favorite one, they had, it was the Covenant Church that my grandmother was a part of, and they had this lady made this bread for the Lord's Supper,
Oh yeah.
and it was
We did
the
that in
biggest,
Michigan.
fluffiest, and I was like, I always had unleavened bread for it, and this stuff was
Packed with
just
leaven.
like, it was just like fluffy and amazing bread.
Best
but I was
Italian
like,
bread I've ever had.
right,
I don't know.
Woo, give me some butter.
This is the sour sourdough.
Give me some olive
Well,
oil
I
and some
used to
pepper.
make bread
Yeah.
every week for
So
the church in
I was
Norfolk.
asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they
We
have
should
these little
do that.
crusty unleavened things.
Yeah.
And I made all sorts of bread. And
Yeah.
I even, the fun one was when I made the bread and the elders, because it was the Disciples of Christ Church, the elders did the communion, and he breaks it open
Uh-huh.
and it's a rainbow inside.
What?
And because I had colored the dough and then I rolled it up and it was all brown on the outside.
Rainbow.
And he was so surprised. And you can see everybody's like, wow.
We'll do that in June.
That's the United Methodist Church now does it every Sunday. So, you know.
Well,
Oh,
it was the Disciples of Christ Church.
right. No, I'm just teasing the new UMC.
Oh, yeah, oh.
Yeah, the rainbow, right? Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know,
boy.
I'm in touch with my old pastor.
Fruity Pebbles in
The
it.
Disciples Church, and he
Yeah.
was really lefty, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So-
You know, I will say this. I don't know.
No.
Look, I don't know
The
where
answer's
I'll
no.
be on this in a year, 2 years, 5 years, but I haven't shifted on it internally in years. The idea of the Lord's Supper in the scriptures really wasn't ever like a Seder. We kind of celebrate it like that now, very ceremoniously. You know, we have the goblet and we have the wafer. But if you look in the New Testament, they ate an actual feast. They ate a meal.
meal.
Um,
It was more like
That's why I want
and
to
it
do
was called a
something on
love
Monday,
feast.
Thursday, and
Maybe
have a
Rice Krispie
feast.
treats.
That would be wonderful.
I think it would be fantastic, and I mean that. And I want to do more stuff like that for Holy Week. And again,
Hey, we got
guys,
this really cool thing coming up next spring. This.
Anyways, so
Check the calendar.
I'm gonna stop live streaming. I love you.